The island of Hispaniola was occupied by the indigenous Taino Indians. During this time, a chieftain or cacique ruled the island through a complex centralized government, which is a fact completely lost by Europeans who dismissed the native Taino as savages. The Taino civilization ended on October 12, 1492, when Christopher Columbus arrived and declared Hispaniola as the most beautiful land that human eyes have ever seen, thus granting Spanish rule over the island. In 1586, English pirate Francis Drake pillaged and invaded the island, weakening Spanish dominion over Hispaniola, leaving the island abandoned and left to the mercy of the pirates for 50 years. In 1655, the French invaded the west portion of the island and reduced the Santo Domingo-controlled portion to less than half after treaties and forced annexations. Then, in 1822, Haitians, under the command of Toussaint Louverture, took over the entire island, and the Spanish-speaking residents had to fight for their independence. Then, after 22 years of Haitian rule, on February 27, 1844, the Spanish part of the island regained its independence thanks to a group of patriots headed by Juan Pablo Duarte. However, after the Dominican Republic was created and independence achieved, various political factions struggled for control of the now capital of Santo Domingo, and small fights continued along the newly created border with Haiti. Santo Domingo annexed itself to Spain in 1861 and lasted 4 years in accumulation with the restored independence. Afterwards, Santo Domingo was controlled by several autocrats, including dictator Rafael Trujillo, who took power after the 1916 to 1924 occupation by the U.S. His reign lasted for 31 years and ended with the execution of Trujillo. Then the early 60s were another period of unrest, marked by revolts, a coup, and a second invasion by the U.S. In the period from 1822 to 1844, the Napoleonic Code was introduced into the Dominican Republic by Haiti, who had political control. However, French influence on Dominican government has gone further than this, with France actually controlling the DR during different periods of its history. In which case, this means that the Dominican legal system is civil law and not common law. As a general comparison, this means the judges hear and decide cases, not juries. Let's start with an example of Dominican civil law. The enjoyment of civil rights. All foreigners of any friendly nation, provided they set their domicile in the territory of the Republic, declare wanting to enjoy this quality, have at the very least 2 years of residence, and expressly renounce their nationality before whoever is right. Since Dominican law is so closely related to Napoleonic Code, or Civil Code as it is often called, this law is almost exactly worded as the version in the original code. The enjoyment of civil rights continued. Article 9. They are Dominican. Second, all the children of Spanish-American republics and the Spanish Antilles neighbors who want to enjoy this quality after a year of having resided in the territory of the Republic. This other one exemplifies the importance of citizenship and is welcoming in the fact that there are so many ways to be a citizen of the Dominican Republic. Thus also places importance on the citizens of the Republic. Now for a look at Criminal Code. Original Criminal Code. The bodies of the executed will be delivered to their families whenever they claim them, leaving them to his burial, which will be without any appliance. Originally, the Dominican Republic had a criminal code based on French ones, but in 2002 they adopted a new criminal procedure code, based on the model Criminal Procedure Code for Latin America. However, in the new criminal code, many articles, including number 13 here, were repealed. This abandoned the inquisitorial model of prosecution, opening room for an accusatory or adversarial system, which has transformed the criminal justice system in the country for the better. The sentencing in criminal matters. Article 14. The men sentenced to life imprisonment or temporary will be used in the most arduous work. They will take a bullet at the time fee, and they will be chained in pairs, where permitted by the nature of the work which they are used. Article 15. The women sentenced to chains will be used in the inner workings of the jails and prisons. In these two examples, they portray the importance of doing work in prison, not just sitting there during the sentence. However, they do place gender bias, giving the men harder work and with more dangerous conditions than the females. This is some of the code that wasn't altered from the original adaptations and translations of Napoleonic Code. Under the Civil Code comes Family Code. Section 2. The Recognition of Natural Children. Article 371. The child, any age, should consider and respect their father and mother. Here we can see that, based on Napoleonic Code and slightly modified in 1978, Dominicans want their children to be considerate and respect their parents, showing the importance of parents and respect in the family. Section 2. The recognition of natural children continued. Article 371-3. The father and mother may not, except for serious reasons, oppose the personal relationships of the child with her grandparents. In the absence of agreement between the parties, modalities of those relationships shall be governed by the appropriate justice of peace. In consideration of exceptions, the justice of the peace can remember the right of correspondence or visits to other people, relatives or not. In this other slightly modified family law, the importance of knowing extended family is emphasized. The importance of elders and family is obviously prevalent in Dominican society. Now for Business Code. Title 4. The Capacity of Unions. Article 338. Unions cannot acquire properties that are not necessary for their business meetings or for their schools, libraries, field trials, and other works relating to its project. In this first example, we see how it's important to the country that labor unions follow their rules and do not do anything that wouldn't make sense to their purpose, just as things should be. Chapter 2. Maritime Transport. Article 308. If the worker dies in defense of the ship, or if he is arrested for the same reason, he will be considered present until the end of the trip, to earn wages that will be entitled under his contract. His widow, ascendants, or descendants who live under his cover will receive, by way of compensation, the amount of their rights and employment benefits. In this second example of business code, it is obvious how important the crew's life is on a ship in trade. It is also shown how important the life of his close relatives by blood or marriage are to the people of the ship and the trade company. As for bankruptcy law, according to the American Bankruptcy Institute Journal, the DR's approach to bankruptcy is inefficient, antiquated, and essentially unused. The current law is a product of its interpretations of a code of commerce from when the Dominican Republic was under Haitian rule from 1821 to 1844, and has remained virtually unchanged. The exception would be the provision to law number 4582 in 1956, which established a compulsory preliminary conciliation proceeding before a creditor could institute a bankruptcy proceeding against the debtor. The present law permits only merchants to file a petition for bankruptcy relief, but, unlike the old law, which made only sole business proprietors eligible to be debtors, the new legislation also considers business enterprises to be eligible to be debtors. Additionally, an individual not engaged in business is ineligible for reorganization or liquidation under the new law. Under the proposed law, an eligible debtor may file with the Chamber of Commerce in the jurisdiction in which the debtor maintains its domicile or place of business a voluntary petition for relief if the debtor is bankrupt or has ceased paying its debts as they came due. Further, one or more creditors holding claims in a qualified amount that also comply with certain requirements may file an involuntary petition against the debtor. The filing of a petition does not determine eligibility to be a debtor under the new law. What this means is that if someone that owes money cannot pay it anymore, they can ask the Chamber of Commerce for a relief. But if several creditors come forth, they can file a petition against the debtor, since he or she owes you, the creditor, money. Also, the Chamber of Commerce will assign a conciliator to formulate and negotiate a way for the debtor to pay his debt. The country has had over 50 constitutions and is less than 200 years of independence. This is due to Dominican practice of promulgating a new constitution whenever an amendment was ratified. Most new constitutions contain only minor modifications. Before, every new ruler of the DR made a constitution to fit their own needs and wishes. Dominicans historically have agreed to a government that is representative and vaguely democratic, civil and political rights, separation of powers, and checks and balances. Beyond that, however, consensus broke down. Throughout its history, the DR had been dominated alternately by two constitutional traditions, democratic and authoritarian. There were barely any attempts to bridge the gap between the opposites. Now the Dominican Republic is a democratic republic, with three branches of government similar to the United States: executive, legislature, and judiciary. In 1961, the Dominican government asked for the Organization of American States to send a mission to the country to set up a system of free elections, which influenced the Central Electoral Board to ensure free and honest elections. And just to be clear, the Organization of American States influenced the creation of the Central Electoral Board, which the Dominican Republic did not have prior to this time. Some major rulers include Rafael Trujillo, who created a system of non-independent courts in his constitution. Basic rights under his rules all but ceased to exist. Rafael governed as a tyrannical dictator, unfettered by constitutional restrictions. In 1963, Juan Bosch's freely elected social democratic government drafted a new and far more liberal constitution. This constitution separated church and state, put severe limits on political activities of the armed forces, restricted the rights of property relative to individual rights, and established a wide range of civil liberties. However, his constitution frightened the more conservative elements in Dominican society, and later a more conservative constitution was formed. One major hero of the Dominican Republic would be Minerva Bernardino. She was appointed a representative of the Dominican Republic at the United Nations in 1950. She is one of only 4 women to sign the United Nations Charter in 1945. She insisted the document include the phrase, "to ensure respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms without discrimination against race, sex, condition, or creed." By 1929, she was very active in the women's rights movement in the Dominican Republic and was a leader in Acción Feminista Dominicana, which led the fight for expanded rights in the 1942 Constitution under Trujillo. She was also known in Latin America for her sustained opposition to strongmen, most notably her self-imposed exile to demonstrate her opposition to dictator Rafael Trujillo in her own country. In 1995, she was awarded the Hispanic Heritage Award for Excellence in Education in Washington at the age of 88. Dominican society has been greatly affected by its turbulent history. The structure of society is a product of years of waves of migration, repression of certain classes, and forced hierarchy. Because of those reasons, there is limited social mobility within Dominican society today, with race and economic status influencing social stratification. About 1/4 of the lower class people are unemployed. Among this group, women tend to find jobs more easily than men, especially in rural areas, and are paid less. Women often support their households, but do not make enough to bring them out of poverty. In the middle class and upper class families, the structure is patriarchal, and the dominant father figure is the norm. As women gain control over the number of children they bear, they have been able to gain greater educational and employment opportunities. Among the lower class families, the structure is often matriarchal because the father does not live in the house. The family unit in the Dominican Republic is considered incredibly important and has formed the basis of stability throughout all the political and economic upheaval of the Dominican Republic. The extended family, usually 3 generations whenever possible, lives within the same vicinity. Thus, family loyalty is a deeply ingrained characteristic of Dominicans, with the family unit seen as a means of social identity and to provide support. Like the vast majority of Latin America, the official religion of the Dominican Republic is Roman Catholicism, with over 90% of the population considered Roman Catholic. While it is prominent in Dominican society, Catholic religious practice is somewhat limited, with most holidays in the DR being far removed from Catholic tradition today. Dominant gender roles exist in the homes of the Dominican Republic. Men were the dominant decision makers and the financial providers, as women's sole responsibility was in the domestic sphere. Since the woman's work is considered inferior for men to do, but important and exceptional nonetheless, they entered the workforce to add the traditional roles of women, such as cooking, sewing, and taking care of the children. The condition of the work areas were poor and were also segregated, but they wanted a feeling of gender identity other than being housemaids. The women struggled to rebel against the dominant male society by working in the labor force and at the same time trying to balance the work waiting for them back home. About 1/4 of the lower-class people are unemployed. Among this group, women tend to find jobs more easily than men, especially in rural areas, and are paid less. Women often support their households, but do not make enough to bring them out of poverty. In middle-class and upper-class families, the structure is patriarchal, and the dominant father figure is the norm. As women gain control over the number of children they bear, they have been able to gain greater educational and employment opportunities. Among the lower-class families, the structure is often matriarchal because the father does not live in the house. The gender inequality of the Dominican Republic encouraged large numbers of women to migrate to the United States, with New York's Washington Heights accepting the greatest influx of immigrants. The high demand for women in the international labor market helped create state policies that favored their immigration into the country. Immigration gave women a chance to escape from male dominance and to improve their status and importance that would affect the future, if not theirs, then their children's. Their increasing influence gave them power in decision-making in their homes and with their domestic responsibilities. However, problems arose when visas were granted to both spouses, which reunited the couple in New York. It meant women would experience male dominance in the household again. Women would experience a double burden of their roles as household manager and provider. Single women especially had no chance but to take on both roles because their work was only source of income. Today, however, education is greatly influencing the role of women. Women who complete college are more likely to have respectable roles in the household and society than those who do not. A small percentage of Dominican women have been entering the political system, the educational system, the business world, medical field, etc. There are a big percentage of women that are still struggling for power in their household, but they are gradually gaining influence day by day. After Columbus discovered Hispaniola, the Spanish settlers tried to enslave the indigenous Taino. This failed, however, since before the debate in Madrid over slavery was finalized, all the Taino had died from European disease. Being unable to use the indigenous population as slaves, the Spanish monarchs of Ferdinand I and Isabella granted permission to import African slaves. This began the Atlantic slave trade. However, since the Dominican Republic, the colony of Santo Domingo at the time, was such a poor colony and only gained some success from the import of cattle, there was not a large import of African slaves, and slavery was not a big thing. An older provision to the criminal code in the Dominican Republic was to criminalize abortion, which 1. Led to more than 90,000 unsafe abortions in the country each year, and 2. Is a violation of women's right to life, health, and autonomy. However, in recent news, there has been a presidential decision to ease the DR's ban on abortion, which is a landmark victory for women's rights. President Danilo Medina recommended that lawmakers amend the criminal code to allow abortion in cases of rape, incest, a deformed fetus, or when a woman's life is in danger. However, ensuring women can access legal and potentially life-saving abortions remains a challenge. In 2013, the Dominican Constitutional Court voted to strip citizenship from Dominicans of Haitian descent. However, at the beginning of former President Martelly's term, the slogan was to put Haiti back on the international map since geopolitically both countries are important to each other. However, since Haiti's government is neither progressive nor functional, the country would be unable to combat such xenophobic behaviors. This brings about the issue of civil law. Since stated in the Civil Code of the Dominican Republic, people are granted citizenship if they live in the country and are from friendly neighbors. Friendly neighbors would be bordering countries or other such countries that the Dominican Republic deems as friendly. But since Haiti and the DR have had such political and economic turmoil to further destroy their relationship, it cannot be considered a friendly neighbor. However, since both countries are deemed important to each other, it is unclear as to why former Dominican administration would not grant such rights to its immigrants, only due to political strife.